you ready for some heart-pumping, action-packed excitement? We're here to take you on a journey through the top 20 most legendary fights in anime history. From epic one-on-one battles to team fights, these fights have become the stuff of legend, inspiring countless fans with their unforgettable moments and incredible displays of strength and skill. Whether you're a seasoned anime veteran or just getting started, these legendary fights are sure to leave you breathless and begging for more. So let's dive in and explore what makes these battles so unforgettable. Let's start things off strong with Shimazaki versus everyone. Any discussion on Mob Psycho fills me with fond memories of the show. There's always something so amazing with every season, and all things considered, this is one of the best action anime there is if you consider the whole package. In addition to a really great plot, it's got mind-bogglingly good animation that enhances these moments way beyond the source material. There are many candidates on what I feel can be the best fight in Mob Psycho, but I've gotta hand it to the Shimazaki fight. From a technical standpoint, this is probably peak anime fighting. Just look at the camera angles, the level of animation, and a masterful presentation of perspective. It really is a fight that you can immerse yourself in and really feel that you're in it. It's things like this that truly elevate what's already a crowning moment in the story. Don't let the simplistic art style fool you. In terms of animation, this is as good as it gets. And if you want to talk about dynamic movement, then you'll get more of it from Samurai Champloo. A show that's largely been forgotten in the sands of time. Samurai Champloo was a unique experiment in its day. It wasn't something I'd seen before when I watched it during college, and it certainly remains unique even till now. It feels like a homage to the more westernized aesthetic in anime that's more common than you think in the early 2000s. And when you combine the sword fights with hip-hop, you get beautiful displays like this. Our two leads find themselves in a fight for their lives facing Kariya, the hand of God in this scene. I largely praise the fight for its excellence in presenting the signature Samurai Champloo flair with its choreography, but I've also got to give some props to how it emphasizes our two leads' philosophies and emotions in it. As I've said a couple of times before, battles and how people approach them are some of the best ways of showing character. It's one of the keys of storytelling, and this is a textbook example of showing style and contrast concerning our three combatants. Takamura versus Hawk also brought in the emotional impact. I think it's about time we add some physical brawling into the mix, don't you think so? And what better way to do it than with a fight from Hajime no Ippo. Takamura versus Hawk is by far my favourite fight in the entire series, and I don't think you need any help to find out why. It's got the whole big fight feel, the whole unstoppable force meets a movable object vibe, and it more than delivered. For an anime about boxing, it's only fitting that it emphasizes the grit, the intensity, the insane grind being in the ring for several rounds entails. Takamura vs Hawk has all of those in spades and more, with me being so immersed that each blow, each heavy punch that was given ample emphasis got me really hyped. When it was all said and done, we just witnessed one of the best fights a combat sport anime could give us. It's all about the emotion and just letting everything sink in, and this one's a winner in that regard. But if you really want to get goosebumps, one fight I'll always go back to is Gurren versus Anti-Spiral. You can use many words to describe TTGL Gurren Lagann, aka Trigger's masterpiece. Its status may be debatable with the studio's impressive library, but I think that in terms of legacy, the show does top it. It also has a magical way of being so inspirational, yet so heart-pounding in its key moments. The fight is cool, but what makes it so good is the talking. That's right, that's what I said. The talking. The exchange between Gurren and the Anti-Spirals is nothing short of uplifting, if I do say so. There's something that really strikes me with shows that are inherently human-centric, those that believe in the power of humanity to strive and overcome even fate, and this fight just epitomizes that theme. Bonus points for the opening song playing throughout the final exchange too. I love it when shows do that, especially with a song as good as Sarairo Days. I really love Gurren Lagann for the battles, but more importantly, the numerous inspirational and empowering themes it has littered throughout its narrative.
この宇宙必ず守れよ
Onto some more light-hearted stuff, however. Here's One Punch Man. Apart from a few dramatic moments, One Punch Man really is more of a light-hearted show. It's a parody, and that's the exact point of it. The whole over-the-top, overpowered hero thing really took off round about this time, and it's a formula to success. But have you seen Saitama get serious? Well, now you do, because in an effort to shake up the formula a little bit, you have this fight with Boros. To their credit, they did try. Boros was sold as someone who could finally be a threat to Saitama, and it worked. For a little while, I suppose. The alien leader actually survived a couple of Saitama's punches, even if his body parts paid the price for it. While Saitama's famed to be able to defeat anyone with just one punch, you gotta wonder what would happen if perhaps there did exist someone with defenses that could prevent them from being one-shotted while throwing bombs in return. At least until Saitama unleashes serious punch and completely obliterates Boros. And it's back to the status quo we go after that. But still, this fight remains one of the best displays of planetary level destruction, and as one of the big One Punch Man fans back in its heyday, the fight is nothing short of glorious. Goku and Jiren had one hell of a showdown as well. When it comes to Dragon Ball, we've had a lot of encounters to remember. The franchise being as old as it is and with such a legacy gave us a lot of fights that could have a place on this list. However, I'd like to give a bit more focus on Super this time, with it being a bit less popular yet just as spectacular. Honestly, I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to revive Dragon Ball in the 2010s with Super, but realistically without Super, we wouldn't have got some amazing movies, and this fight right here. Full-powered Ultra Instinct Goku was one of the best highlights of Super as a whole. Seeing Goku and Jiren duke it out in an unprecedented scale of destruction was a treat for Dragon Ball fans everywhere. Seeing these kinds of cataclysmic fights with modern art and animation really made fans, both new ones and the classic 90s kids, hyped for a whole lot more. Is this peak Dragon Ball Super? Well, with so many other good moments on its resume, that is debatable, but it is sure one of the best fights it had to offer. But I don't think it can match this one in terms of cultural footprint. Here's Jotaro versus Dio. Fight that spawned 1,000 memes. Jotaro vs Dio is the fight that most people, even non-JoJo fans, know the series for. Taking a look at it with a detached point of view, however, shows that this was an awesome fight in its own right. Even without taking note of the cultural impact, this is an awesome fight that lived up to all the expectations for a climactic fight. It's a long time coming, and seeing Jotaro and Dio finally get into it at full force really made Stardust Crusaders a favourite amongst the many JoJo series. It's also interesting that while a lot of the JoJo fights ended up being creative, this one lived with the concept of the rule of cool primarily. The most iconic fight, and it's one where the writers just seemingly threw stuff out and showed off whatever seemed the coolest. And by God, it works so well. A lot of that has to do with how much of a masterclass this fight was in terms of sound direction. You can tell the voice actors had so much fun and energy during this scene and bringing it to life for us all to enjoy. Coming right up, we have one of the best Bleach fights of all, Ichigo vs Byakuya. What makes Ichigo vs Byakuya special? Well, certainly not the power level, as these two were nowhere near the overpowered monstrosities that the Bleach universe had like Aizen and Yamamoto. The animation wasn't turning heads back in the 2000s. Still, I feel that this fight is the best Bleach fight had to offer due to the whole setup and the progression of the fight. It had so many emotional stakes, and even now, it showed how good Bleach can be with the power levels just toned down a little. All you need to do is build up the fight properly and make it a great payoff, all while creating a great back and forth between our plucky protagonist and a seemingly unbeatable obstacle. This is the fight where Byakuya first found himself in real trouble, and Ichigo always seemed to have another ace up his sleeve to counter whatever the opponent had to throw at him. And this actually felt natural and earned, in contrast to the shonen special of people randomly whipping out counters until one guy runs out and loses. As a standalone fight, Ichigo vs Byakuya is pretty plain even if it's really good, being practically the final battle of an arc. Taken with context, it's peak Bleach. the fight that caps off the franchise's best arc. Yusuke vs Toguro is also a classic I'll always treasure. Yes, I intentionally put this right after Bleach, considering how similar the two are to each other. However, one thing Bleach doesn't have is a tournament arc, one where this next fight took place, which puts Yusuke against Toguro in our protagonist's best fight to date. The whole tournament had so many unforgettable fights, but this clash is what everyone was waiting for. Yusuke taking on Toguro and all his power. We're used to the saying a David versus Goliath fight, but this fight is where that saying gets taken literally and to ridiculous proportions too. It's the climax of the tournament that we all deserve. For one, there was a real sense of danger here, as Yusuke looked really outmatched, and then there's the whole implication of this fight and how it relates to both Yusuke and Toguro's goals and philosophies. This is a great way to wrap up Toguro's storyline that was started with his backstory and his eventual goal that pushed him to become the monster that he is. Great storybook ending with this one. Let's go back down to the earth for this next fight now, shall we? Spike versus Vincent is where it's at. With most of the previous fights featuring supernatural powers and all, I think it's about time we go to something a little bit more grounded. And this Cowboy Bebop fight is the right mix of grounded yet thrilling. It captures the magic of classic Hollywood fights, combining physical brawling and a bit of gunfire. It's all exciting to watch unfold. Cowboy Bebop really was a treasure of its time, and while I wouldn't claim that this fight encapsulates everything that I love about the show, it's a good showcase of a very important part of the show. The action sequences in the show are fire, and the characters all had this unique charisma and energy that improved the atmosphere of their conflicts. And if you're enjoying the video so far, then please make sure you leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. We continue with another fight featuring supporting characters, King Bradley versus Scar. FMA is not exactly an anime known best for its fights. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's got some great action, but when people think of FMA, it's the themes and the characters people gravitate to, not the fights. But I argue that some of the best moments of the show involve completing character arcs and showing the conclusion of journeys through its fights, almost all which have meaning. The one that stands out to me the most though is King Bradley vs Scar. Both are really strong characters as far as development's concerned, and after letting us get a glimpse of their pasts and their journeys to get to the final act of Brotherhood, I did find it poetic that it's these two who duke it out for King Bradley's last dance. It's a fight where both combatants gave and lost it all, with both expected and unexpected turns. Coming in, I wondered how Scar would overcome King Bradley's overpowered abilities, and I was pleased with the way things developed. In the same vein, we have another fight involving a seemingly invincible villain in Kenshin versus Shisio. Not to say that Shissio's skill in swordsmanship holds a candle to the insane clairvoyant abilities King Bradley had, but in the same vein, this sadistic swordsman is the Kenshin universe's strongest villain. Taking Hiko out of the picture, he has no peer in one-on-one combat, and for someone like Kenshin, who already handicapped himself in the battle with his oath never to kill, that's a ruthless villain that's impossible to overcome on paper. It's those kinds of setups that make fights like these so exciting. You never know what's going to happen entering it, and true to expectations, the fight had a lot of twists to continue keeping things interesting. You have people joining the fight one after another, revelations involving Shisio, and some legitimate heartbreaking moments that further solidify both Kenshin's resolve and Shissio's cruelty. It's a fight that took me on an emotional ride, and it's something you only experience by watching Rerouni Kenshin's Kyoto arc. Luffy and Lucci had one of the best fights One Piece ever had. I've noticed that it's been a while since I talked about Luffy versus Lucci, and that's a shame really. I was too focused on getting pumped up with all the recent content with Kaido, or the stuff that people will remember like Ace and Whitebeard moments, that I felt like I overlooked what I felt was a really great battle. Well, that changes today. For Luffy versus Lucci is yet another of the great fights One Piece gave us, and it's largely to do with the thematic value to it. It's a very meaningful fight that exemplifies the clashing of two drastically different worldviews. It really helped push forth One Piece's overall theme of pushing forward the value of freedom and the willingness to put everything on the line. The fight itself is great with some tense moments, but I really love this fight for the symbolic value behind it. It also showed Lucci that the type of opponent he had to be scared of isn't the strongest one, but the one with the firmest heart. Yuji and Todo versus Hanami is a quintessential example of the power of modern animation. If you needed even more reason to respect the hard work our animators do, the way they painstakingly bring to life some of the biggest moments in the manga we enjoy, well, here's something for you to feast your eyes on. There's a lot to like about this fight. I've repeatedly featured this fight and focused more on the chemistry between Yuji and Todo, as well as how this fight illustrated their growing bond and trust in one another. Now, I still stand by those words, but I'd also give the central spotlight on just how great the animation for this fight is. Jujutsu Kaisen has had a lot of mind-blowing moments gifted to us by MAPPA and the hard-working staff, but this one takes the cake when you look at just how much love and work went into the fight choreography. It just doesn't hit as hard in manga form, right? But with the fight choreography done by the guys at MAPPA, this has quickly become the clash to remember if we're talking Jujutsu Kaisen. And speaking of insane animation, how's Team Tengen versus Daki and Gyutaro? I'm sure that everyone knows that when it comes to fight animation and production values, few can beat Ufotable's best. Heck, it's because of this type of animation that Demon Slayer rose to fame, exploding into popularity well into its run. Sure, the animation and the overall atmosphere of the Rui fight is insane, but it just felt like it was lacking in a lot of things. For example, emotional stakes, or the chance to let those involved show off the best of their abilities and play off each other. That, however, gets taken care of in the climactic battle in the Red Light District arc. On paper, this is an overly long fight, but it never felt that way when you're watching it. It also manages to get everyone involved, and rightfully so, because unlike with Rui, the heroes are dealing with upper moon demons this time. There's also the thing with way higher stakes, because now it's not just an isolated forest incident, but one where the lives of so many are at stake, and with strong enemies that the heroes can't just brute force their way through, it does add another dimension of suspense. You just can't wait to see how the heroes get to solve the puzzle of defeating the two, and just when you think they've got it, more complications arise. Before you know, you're near the end of the arc already. Well, what else can I say? That's one immersive fight that makes this season of Demon Slayer so good. Luolang vs Nanashi is a great way to wrap up an outstanding movie. Not a lot of people who know Sword of the Stranger these days, but it's one of the anime movies I feel has definitely stood the test of time. Just looking at it, it doesn't seem like something that the modern anime fans would likely gravitate to on a whim, but the whole hour and a half watching the movie is definitely worth the time. It's got some jaw-dropping sequences, awesome plot and setting, and the rightful dose of violence for the genre of movie. And it also had something that I really look up to highly in anime: a sense of conclusion, a nice way to wrap everything up, both narratively and philosophically. Sword of the Stranger does just that, and gives us this epic battle along with it. Nanashi and Luolang's fight in the film's finale really is one of the best fights in anime movie history, if we're talking from a pure sword fighting perspective. Great back and forth and a somber yet pumping atmosphere to get everyone in the mood makes this an excellent climax. And if you want to talk about hype and build-up, there are few things capable of beating Naruto vs Sasuke. It's been there from the start. It's been established ever since that eventually we'll have Naruto versus Sasuke. The story between the two just writes itself. And while they had their series of fights littered around Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, the final fight does take the crown. It's a fight that is mostly carried by the story and the clashing philosophies of the two, but don't tell me you didn't feel excited to see these two finally at their peak of their powers go all out. End of the series fights are great because of how much the power level has been raised to that point, and this one is no exception. Also, it isn't overly long and every moment counted when the two characters poured their hearts out in fighting each other. It's the final battle, and rightfully so. It's got the build-up, it's got the thematic element to it, and it definitely didn't come out of nowhere like Kaguya did. The battle ending the perfect way it did, with a physical draw yet a clear philosophical winner, is the icing on the cake. We're not quite done with storied rivalries yet, as here comes Gintoki versus Takasugi. Gintoki and Takasugi have been through a lot. The two foils might as well be siblings, and they've had a long history of blood and betrayal. Thus, it's inevitable that the two would have to cross blades somewhere down the line. Somewhere like episode 304, where the two of them collide to decide things once and for all. What I love about this fight is that it's long, but filled with background content. Takasugi and Gintoki have a relationship that's simply full of intrigue, and it was all laid out in this fight as it should be. That helped increase the emotional gravity of the battle, and along with how the two fought their hearts out, it's that makes it such an immersive fight. The fighting is good, but it's the story that really pushed this fight up a notch. The shared dialogue between the two was the tipping point. This is one of my favourite hero-rival dynamics right here, and it's a great farewell to Takasugi before he temporarily leaves the story. Let's feature a Fate fight now too. After all, before Demon Slayer, Fate was Ufotable's claim to fame for the general audience. Saber and Ryder didn't have a storied rivalry, but the sheer insanity of the animation makes this a noteworthy fight. Ufotable always brought their A game in their big productions, and the theatrical adaptation of Heaven's Feel, the final mainline Fate route that came out in anime form, was just the perfect place for them to bring out their prowess. The fight's just all sorts of wild, with the movement, the environmental destruction, the attack effects and the like. On another note, I'm also just glad that we got to see Ryder go all out and even match Saber. For far too long, Ryder's been getting pushed aside or taken out early in the Grail War, but who knew all it took was a halfway decent master for her to contest even the mighty Saber in this show of skill. It wasn't technically the final battle in Heaven's Feel, but it might as well have been. For some people, the Shiro versus Girei battle afterwards felt more like an afterthought. We'll end at Netero versus Meruem. And here we have two of the strongest characters in the series taking on each other in a fight to death. Netero and Meruem's fight remains one of my favourite mentor fights. I think it paved the perfect way for Netero to go, pushed Meruem up the ranks in terms of reputation, and overall created a major moment for fans to remember. I think the fight brings a lot to the table besides the actual action. For one, you've got the roles being switched here, as Meruem actually acts more heroic in this fight, looking for dialogue instead of destruction. On one hand, some can point to Netero's role as a villain, while the others say that it's not all justified due to how much is at stake against the Chimera Ants. It's not something you see every day from a shonen, and that kind of writing is why I love Hunter x Hunter so much. As for the action itself, well, it's also a fight where everything had to be precise for Netero, and it's also the first and last time you see him push to the point of doing what he had to do and pull a noble sacrifice. It's one of the best fights of all time. Whoa, that's 20 fights done. And now it's time for you to share what your top fights in anime are. I'm positive I overlooked some which didn't make it, but isn't that just a testament to how much anime as a medium can touch our hearts and get us feeling pumped and excited? Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll be back for the next list.